Hello all, Matthew here, following on from our last video of the 3-part Ainz series. I will be bringing you the painting of the base. I made the base using an old diabetes fueled cardboard box and some sprue to create something like that of the Rearstein Kingdom. And to the people that do not know what Overlord is, or the Rearstein Kingdom in a sense, basically it's a nice old medieval settlement town area. We see this a lot throughout the series, season 1 to season 3, and as well in the mangas, and I think I haven't read the visual novels, but I think that as well goes rather in depth about it. But waffling away, the base isn't really that difficult to do. The brushes I used were a variety of small and medium brushes, with a small makeup brush and a good old dry brush. All of these being relatively cheap and easy to come by. These were mainly my throwaway brushes, so it was nice just to use them. I recently brought about a pack of 20 throwaway detail brushes because I usually do a lot of weathering, and those are amazing. I'll get the link of it and chuck it in the description because they're perfect brushes for what I do. And I think if you're starting off in a hobby, they're as well really good ones. After the base is primed, we'll nicely move over to the painting of the bricks. These are layered across the floor. The colours I used are Mournfang Brown, Icuubi and Icuubi by Darkness. After a lot of the tiles are painted over, leaving a few of them white, we'll move over to a very liberal wash of brown. The wash I used in my case was Agarx Earthshade, a Citadel product. What this will do is alter the colour of the white bricks to be able to be browner of a colour, and also create dark recesses within each of the tiles, making the idea that there are shadows between them. You can add a black wash to this if you want to make the shadows even stronger. I didn't in my case, as I want to have them a tad lighter, but it is always open to an interpretation. After enough washes are done and you think it looks good enough, leave it out to dry for some time. After it has dried, move over to do a lovely dry brushing. Remember to wait for the base to be dry for sure, and to not be too eager and jump in. I did this in my case and it plagued me during the dry brushing, as the paint of grey I used did not hit the edges but instead stained the top of the tiles. As you can see, there is a teeny bit of grey mixed in with the browns, which I didn't want, but some people may in their case. The grey I used was Dawnstone, but many other greys you can use like Urshan Grey. With a lovely dry brushing over and done with, we can move over to starting to add some detail onto the ground. In my case, I went in to create a moss-like colour on the ground to make it look nicely weathered and old. Using a sponge, I aggressively put down Caliban Green, followed by Averland Sunset. Both these are Citadel products. Now that the moss was done, I also picked out the other details, these being the skulls. If you want a full tutorial on how to paint skulls, I made a video around last year or so about how to paint them, which should be in the top right hand corner if I remember. With the poor camera quality, we move over to the pillars of the house. With this I use a mix of Abaddon Black and Mournfang Brown to the pillars. Another lovely dry brushing of Vermin Brown allows us to make the pillars dark brown from before, pop just that bit more without having to put too much detail into it and being rather quick. I don't know if Vermin Brown is still sold by Citadel, but if not, there are many other different light brown substitutes that can be used to cater for this. If you can't find any, just say in the comments and I'll throw a few links or names in your general direction. Now that the pillars are popping, we move over to the wall. For this I use a tannish colour to paint it up. At the point of painting and recording this video, I cannot remember the paint's name, as I'd stolen it from my sister, and I'm thinking it may have been a gouache paint, but I don't know. And it's of course been reclaimed back. The motion with the paint should be either a vertical or horizontal motion, as having it in all different directions would make the wall look very odd after it's been painted. We continue with the same colour, but instead do some stippling on the other side. Make it resemble a lot like that disgusting 1980s popcorn ceilings. I never understood why people in the 1980s thought that looked nice. It just gives me nightmares looking at it. And I'm not person fashion. To create the impression and the feeling of that there was something behind the wall like bricks, we painted over / drawed over the tan with pencil in a brick-like pattern. This is usually used as a marker for ourselves to not jump fully in because the next colour is a tad dark. After we have done our little drawing with the pencil, we'll go over with a light, small amount of Averland black. I need to put emphasis on small amount because you do not want to stain your yellow you put on, because yellow is quite a, I don't know the word for it, but it's quite a weak colour and can easily be stained by darker ones like blacks. You can use any different black in your case, but Averland black is a good one. I use my finger here to smudge it a bit, just to make it seem more distorted and broken up. And then you go over and add some more tan over it, but with it watered down. As mine was gouache, I believe it was gouache, actually adding water made it smudge even more, which was very, very nice. You could do this quite well if it's a teeny bit wet from beforehand, and it makes it look a bit nicer and has seen better days. What this now does is allow us to see the black from before, but not in such a high amount that it seems out of the ordinary. I believe this makes it just look that tad bit nicer. Now, trying to make the building look old, I added a lot of Agarx earthshade to the walls. This is quite a reoccurring thing with the brown washes. This is because it makes it have a very old and wet feeling to it, and not look that out of the ordinary, as you can put the excuse of water damage to it. While it was drying, I proceeded to stipple Caliban green and Averland sunset over the wall to make disparities, I believe that's how you say it, within it. Using the Caliban green again, I started to paint an ivy moss-like thing on the side of the building. I went over with Moot green all over the stipple Caliban green in a much smaller amount, and the moss from before. Lastly, I went over with Evil Sun Scarlet on the greens to make it look like fruits were appearing on it, and once that was all done, I put a lovely coat of, guess what? Agarx Earthshade. Now, with creating with Evil Sun Scarlet, if you are trying to work out on what seasons you're actually making it and what plant, because that will really help in creating a story for your piece. After everything has now dried off, I started to superglue leaves onto the base. The leaves I am using are from a large bag that has survived me since coming back to the hobby 3 years ago. These leaves are found in many areas and are commonly seen in model railway sets. I use superglue to put these onto areas so that it has a very firm touch to it. PVA glue can be used as well. Building a large amount up around the base of the wall and as well on top of the wall, it is good to cover the mistakes that we had from before. I had many mistakes when I was doing tiles where it seeped in, some of the washes were incorrectly done, and it's covered up all those problems from before. Now that the leaves are put on the other side and dried, we will move over to the other side of the wall. To make the stippling of the paint from before come out and pop just that bit more, we will do a Nuln oil wash over it and the floorboards below it. After around 5 or so minutes, go over with a towel and lightly tap into the areas that had an excess of moss, just to make it a tad more tidily done. Using our lovely Vermin brown, we will start to paint the floorboards out. Remember to have it as a nicer coat. Do as Duncan says, 2 thin coats. Once it has dried, we will start to dry brush over with Hexos Pale Sun. You can use Screaming Skull as well for this, as they both have about the same textures. What this does is show even more of the stippled effect of a wall before, and makes it look just that much better. Staying on the dry brush train, we will start to dry brush over the base with a primary of Bugmans Blow. Bugmans Blow is a paint usually used for faces, but it's very good on browns. And after you feel there is enough of the primary highlights of Bugmans Blow over, we'll start doing a secondary highlight, still staying on the dry brush train, of Corax White. We're doing a very light one, just as Corax White is white, and you don't want to make it too glowy, in a sense. Using the steps from before on the moss, we will sponge across the base with Caliban green, and then go up with a lighter amount of Moot green, and if you want, add some Averland sunset to it. Remember, during this phase, less is always more. You don't want to do too much that you have to restart. Going back to tiles, we will put a few grass tufts around the base to make it look more worn and overgrown. You can use instead leaves from Green Stuff World if you want it to be more with an autumn feel. I believe they've got a little stamper thing, so you can make your own leaves as well there. After grass tufts are put in the right order, we start to apply a very little amount of snow over the base. I found this much later on that the snow and the leaves do not like one another that much, and makes it actually make the snow look a lot like warp dust has been sprayed all over them from the Skaven. So if you want to do a Skaven piece, it's great, but mine is for Skaven, it's for an undead necromancer guy. Finally, to tip the model off, we go over the trim of the whole model and the smaller base as well inside of it with a nice black trim. What black trim does is just pop every single thing on the base just that bit more, making it so much nicer. I made and painted off camera a Rearstein Kingdom soldier hiding from Ainz, so that the area indoors was not barren. I felt this paint and build went very well. All the paints and equipment I have used are labelled down below, apart from a few if I'd forgotten their names. But thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this stuff, as well like and comment. Have a nice day. This is Teretrix Wargaming out.